Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Being 6:02 p.m, I'll declare the meeting of the Shire of Capel open. In beginning, we wish to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land we're meeting on, the Wadani people. We wish to acknowledge and respect their continuing connection to the land, waters and community. We pay our respects to all members of the Aboriginal communities and their culture, and to elders past and present, their descendants who are with us today, and those who will follow in their footsteps. Record of attendance, we have full complement of councillors here tonight. Response to previous public questions taken on notice, they provided in the agenda. We now move to public question time. Got a number on notice here. The first from Mrs. Carolyn Gibson. Miss Gibson present? No. I'll come back to that one. Is Jacqueline Smythe present? No. I'll come back to that. John Norwell? No. I'll come back to that. Ian Cocker? If I could just approach the lectern and just state your name and locality for the minutes, please.
My name is Ian Cocker. I live at Peppermint Grove Beach in Peppermint Grove Terrace. Would you like me to read the question? Okay. Question 1 pertains to item 13.3 and in particular BF/2024/3, which is one of the Bushfire Advisory Committee recommendations. The question is Council aware that BFAC did not have an opportunity due to the restriction of standing orders to discuss or provide a technical recommendation regarding the proposed removal of the prohibition of lighting of wood solid fuel barbecues and pizza ovens when the fire rating is high or above? Question 2, and in light of a drying climate, escalating bushfire threat, and an increased population and tourism, how can Council possibly endorse a flawed recommendation that will increase the Shire's fire exposure by allowing the lighting of wood solid fuel barbecues and pizza ovens? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cocker, for the questions. In response to your first question, proposed changes to the contents of the Shire's bushfire mitigation notice regarding solid fuels, barbecues and pizza ovens was discussed and voted at the BFAC meeting, as you're aware, on the 17th of April 2024. It was done in accordance with legislation, regulation and the standing orders. The recommendation will be considered later this evening. And in regard to your second question, the BFAC recommendation was introduced, debated and voted on in accordance with the relevant legislation and regulations. This recommendation from the BFAC will be presented to Council later this evening in the agenda, and Council can then make its decision in light of all information received, including from your presentation, which I believe you have later this evening. Thank you. Ms. Penny David?
Thank you, Councillors, CEO, President. My first question was referring to the proposed EIL at Lot 148 Skippings Road in Boyanup. I note that the Shire of Capel's local planning policy for extractive industries states that development must not prejudicially affect sites of cultural and or historic significance on or near the land. Centrix Environmental, who conducted the environmental analysis on behalf of the Shire for the EIL, have stated in their report that the wetlands, particularly in the context of the site location, may have a cultural significance. With the new cultural laws in place, Aboriginal Cultural Heritage Act 2021, cultural clearance is likely required for extractive industry works. This has not been addressed in the document, perhaps as the new laws are current as of 1st of July 2023, but should be addressed as part of this review. What advice in relation to cultural significance did the Shire receive, given that the RAR was prepared prior to the repeal of the Aboriginal Cultural Heritage Act 2021?
Thank you, Ms David, for the question. Advice on Aboriginal heritage was provided by the Department of Planning, Lands and Heritage through their submission. The submission stated a review of the Register of Places and Objects, as well as the Department of Planning, Lands and Heritage Aboriginal Heritage database, confirmed that said that the lot does not intersect with any recorded Aboriginal heritage place. The Shire considered this advice when developing its RAR.
Thank you. I received a reply to my questions taken on notice, which are in the agenda. Thank you for that. And in response to those answers, I'd like to say that the Shire of Capel has produced a responsible authority report, referred to as a RAR, and the Planning and Development Act 2005 defines the responsible authority as, except as provided in other regulations, in relation to a local planning scheme or local interim development order, the local government is responsible for the enforcement of the observance of the scheme or order or the execution of any works which are under the scheme or order or this act are to be executed by local government. So I do not know what information was provided by the Shire Office to the governing bodies and departments to accompany the EIL application. And I have neither seen nor been supplied with any sort of due diligence undertaken by the Shire of Capel staff. The fact that the Shire has gone out to the governing bodies does not obviate Council's responsibility under the Planning and Development Act. So coming back with the responses to my questions and telling me that government authorities have approved it, JDAP have approved it, and everyone else has seen it and approved it, means that the Capel Shire, as a responsible authority sitting above these other entities, has approved it and is now responsible for it. JDAP have also stated the same, that the Shire is responsible now. As a responsible authority, telling me that the operator will need to comply with the laws that are to paraphrase out of Capel Shire's jurisdiction is not helpful. I have provided data to back up my concerns regarding the matrix of the sand that relate to a number of ratepayers, and yet nothing is actually done to alleviate these concerns. Why won't Capel Shire test the sand? The proponent clearly has, otherwise they would not have glass manufacturers requiring high silica content sand on site undertaking their own testing. This will all become an increasingly bigger issue for the responsible authority to deal with. I'm asking Capel Shire again, after 12 months of asking, to test the matrix of the sand, including its silica content. Will the Shire please test the sand? And if the Shire thinks that some other government department needs to test it, will the Shire ask them to do it, please?
Thank you, Ms David, for the question. The DAP issued its decision based on the relevant advice provided at the meeting. The local government is responsible for ensuring compliance with the conditions of this approval and does so through its extractive industry licence approvals. The DAP, in making this decision, had regard to the Department of Health's submission and responded to concerns regarding health impacts from dust based on the sand's composition. For example, a condition is placed on proponent prior to the commencement of development, with suitable agreements being made with the Shire of Capel for the payment of road, as an example, reinstatement contribution for the road deterioration purposes associated with restricted access vehicles. The extracted industry licence will not be issued unless this and other conditions are satisfied. The Department of Health submission, however, advice was that the proposal did not generate risks associated on this site, as was reported in the Responsible Authority report.
Thank you.
Mr Bob Horsfell.
Good evening. I refer to the proposed EIL at Lot 148 Skippings Road in Boyna. The Shire was required to notify landowners and occupiers of the proposed EIL my home was at the time of the original application 106 metres from the EIL. No one from the Shire contacted my family about it or any other letter telling us to look at the council's website. Given the proximity to our home and the queries that we've had, why has no one from the Shire, other than Councillor Dillon, who we appreciate, came to site and showed concern, come to our property to see how it will affect us? No consultation has taken place, no transparency. So the question is this how ratepayers are treated by the Shire? I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr Horsfell, for your questions. Notice and advertising has been undertaken consistent with the statutory requirements, which includes posting written letters to all affected neighbours.
It was omitted from the website.
We're going to have that reviewed. The Development Assessment Panel process provided several opportunities to be involved in the decision-making process, including opportunities to make written submission and make direct deputations to the Development Assessment Panel.
Not advised.
Thank you, Mr Horsfell.
Thank you.
Mrs Teresa Horsfell.
Good evening, Chairman, Councillors and Mr McMile. I refer to the proposed EIL at Lot 148 Skippings Road, Boynup. Question 1. The Department of Health, in providing its feedback in relation to the EIL, has relied on the proponent stating that no dust is to cross the boundary at any time. The Department of Health states that the proponent should discuss and agree on these dust management measures with local residents. The Shire of Capel officers' comments were: agree, recommend a condition to require additional controls be imposed on dust management to reduce risk and provide baseline and ongoing data to assist with auditing dust and for compliance. While the Shire of Capel's officer has agreed with all the Department of Health comments, did Shire of Capel ask the proponent to agree on the dust management measures with local residents? I have not had discussions nor agreement with either the Shire of Capel or the proponent. Please advise what agreement has been reached. Likewise, the Shire of Capel has agreed to the proponent's dust management plan, which does not provide a baseline. Why has the Shire agreed with the Department of Health comments, recommended additional controls, but not imposed them in the responsible authority report?
Thank you, Mrs Horsfell, for the questions. The applicant has not progressed the application beyond receiving the decision from the Development Assessment Panel. Prior to commencing works, it will be necessary for the applicant to demonstrate compliance with the conditions imposed before the issuing of the licence as per our extractive industries local law. So included in that determination was a condition 17, which was prior to the issuing of that licence, a dust management plan is to be implemented to the satisfaction of the Shire of Capel, and there was a number of conditions that also had to be met within that. So that will have to occur before they're allowed to extract any material.
Okay, thank you. Question 2. The Department of Water and Environmental Regulation, in their response to the development application, advised Shire to consult with the Department of Biodiversity, Conservation and Attractions regarding the proposed extraction and the resource enhancement wetland. Can Council please tell me what the response was from the Department of Biodiversity, Conservation and Attractions, as I'm unable to find it?
The Department of Biodiversity, Conservation and Attractions advice is contained on page 65 of the 2nd of August 2023 DAP agenda. A link will be provided in the minutes, but it is noted that this is not the full submission, as it did not appear in the scheduled submissions. However, a full submission can be provided to you should you wish.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Thank you. Sarah Jane Gillett.
Good evening, thank you. My name is Sarah Gillett. I am newly arrived in this beautiful part of the country. Thank you very much for welcoming me. We have purchased land in Dalyalup. Apologies if I have pronounced that incorrectly. My first question is, we have purchased a block of land at the acreage Minnonup Road in Dalyalup, which has been designated a special rural lot. Regarding the keeping of any livestock on the land, the environmental report carried out in 2018 indicated that nutrient runoff is not expected to be a risk or increase with the land's intended use. And the report stated that the Shire's intended purpose of the land was to include hobby farms. And the EPA issued a letter to the council stating it would not do an assessment of the area and in fact recommended stock and intensive agriculture to not be prohibited in these lots. There are multiple properties around the creek that have a number of livestock. I fully accept that our lots are not big enough to keep my horses on, but we would like the opportunity to keep a couple of miniature goats and some chickens, and would appreciate an explanation as to why there are these deviations to Shire policies that appear to affect only the acreage site.
Thank you, Mrs. Gillett, for the questions. While that was initially endorsed by the council, the acreage is in an environmentally sensitive area, abutting wetlands and drainage features. And in addition, the acreage lots are predominantly 1 hectare in size. Based on those factors, the Minister for Planning, when approving the rezoning for the acreage, decided that the decision included the requirement that livestock would not be permitted. These approved provisions imposed by the Minister and as part of the rezoning are now incorporated in Local Planning Scheme number 8, which unfortunately does not provide scope for the council to have any discretion or variation on the matter.
Thank you. My brain will not keep all of that information. The answers to these council meetings, are they provided in links afterwards?
They'll be included in minutes.
Thank you very much. I'm trying to avoid you getting the same questions from everybody from the acreage. And my question too was regarding the boundary fencing at the acreage. The developers have been granted permission to place just a 2-strand wire boundary fence on 3 sides of each property. This would appear to not meet the minimum requirements under the Shire's own fencing local law of 2016, Government Gazette 2716, for a special rural lot. The 2 strands are virtually invisible and give cause for serious concern regarding wildlife safety as well as a total lack of containment between properties. Once again, we would appreciate an explanation as to why there are these deviations to Shire policies that appear to only affect the acreage site in that area.
Thank you for the question. The standards, as you correctly pointed out, for dividing fences are detailed in Schedule 4 of the Shire of Capel Fencing Local Law 2016. This establishes standards that apply, which includes the minimum for 5 wires to be included in those sorts of fencing. We've had staff go out and investigate the site as recently as today and found that that is not the case. Shire staff will be in contact with the developer to investigate that matter further.
Sincerely appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Mrs. Kerry Bemrose and Sandra Kukerney. I'll circle back to those. But first, going back to Carolyn Gibson from Dalyalup on Green Waste Collection. Carolyn is asthmatic and currently experiencing difficulties with the regular burn-off occurring in Dalyalup. The smoke and ash are landing on her house. My question for the Ordinary Council meeting is about investigating the option for the green waste collection for Dalyalup in the coming budget. And the response to that is, the waste strategy was recently adopted by Council at the April Ordinary Council meeting and included a section that considers the Shire's green waste and hard waste collections. The actions for staff including investigating this collection service in terms of participation rates, tonnage of waste and materials collected, and associated costs of collection and disposal to ultimately determine whether this service should be continued as is, reduced, removed or amended. This review will be completed in 2024-25 financial year. The current draft budget has been compiled including a continuation of the existing service for this coming financial year while the service is being reviewed. Some questions from Jacqueline Smith from Dalyalup regarding the acreage, similar to the previous questions. I still do not have an address for my property in the acreage. When will street addresses be issued so that I may get my mail and bins delivered? The response to that is there are two ways street addresses can be issued to new lots. Number one is our standard process is to wait until building applications are approved and driveways are constructed. We then utilise software through Main Roads WA to cross-reference the street information, rural street number, RSN, but this information has not yet been uploaded to the estate as it is so new. Or the second way, we assign the street numbers after receiving as constructed drawings from the developer. These are entered into the Shire's asset program, and this allows the rural street numbers to be assigned. As yet, the Shire has not yet received the as constructed drawings either. Shire officers will take your request on notice and work towards you receiving your rural street number as soon as possible. Further, we do advise you not to order your bins as yet, as they will be delivered to the site, and until there is a house to secure them properly, they may go missing. We do experience this regularly with new dwellings when they are left unsecured. Please forward the request for your bins once your house has been completed, and they'll be delivered to you on site. Question 3. Shire of Capel Local Law 2016 specifies the minimum requirements and specifications dividing fences. Schedule 4 specifies the requirement for special rural lots. The developer Cedar Woods has apparently been installing 2-strand fencing for dividing fences, which does not meet these minimum requirements. There was no community consultations. Who gave this approval and under what grounds? Similar to the previous response, the standards for dividing fences are detailed in Schedule 4 of the local government's the Shire of Capel's Fencing Local Law 2016. Shire staff will be in contact with the developer to investigate this matter further. And from a John Norwell regarding the acreage, when will the Shire of Capel issue the house numbers, as Landgate have stated that this is the Shire's responsibility? As previously stated in Mrs. Smythe's question, there are two ways in which street numbers are issued to new lots. Number one, through a standard process of waiting until building application is approved and driveways are constructed. We then utilise the software through Main Roads WA to cross-reference street information, but this information has yet to be uploaded as the estate is so new. Or the second way, we assign street numbers after receiving as constructed drawings from the developer. These are entered into the Shire's asset program, and this allows for rural street numbers to be assigned. As yet, the Shire has not yet received the as constructed drawings. Shire officers will take this request on notice and work towards all property owners receiving their rural street numbers as soon as possible. And then there were some questions from Kerry Bemrose. Regarding local planning scheme number 8, could council confirm if the Sadlerley Property Group opposed the special control area number 8, included in local planning scheme number 8, map 6, drafted and dated the 21st of January 2021, where a continuous corridor of native vegetation was left alongside Moment Parade, including the green patch, as documents obtained by the Shire of Capel under Freedom of Information Act appear to indicate? And if yes, what were the reasons? Given the complexity of the question and our desire to be thorough and complete in our response, we'll take that question on notice. Question 2, could council confirm if the Sadlerley Property Group opposed the special control area at number 8 in LPS number 8, map 6, drafted and dated the 21st of January 2021, alleging it had no strategic or scientific basis and or was duplicating requirements already dealt with under various other legislation, as the document obtained under the Freedom of Information Act by the Shire of Capel appears to indicate. Again, given the complexity of the question and our desire to provide a thorough and complete response, we'll take that question on notice. Question 3, what particular provisions concerning landscape, environmental built form, land and site management issues will apply in addition to zoning requirements to the areas where the final special control area number 8 regional ecological linkages are situated and where hundreds of residents already live? Was the community consulted about it? Again, given the complexity of the question and our desire to provide a thorough and complete response, we'll take that on notice. And from Sandra Kearney, with regard to local planning scheme number 8, could council explain who approved the removal of the special control area number 8 as advertised in local planning scheme number 8, map 6, drafted and dated the 21st of January 2021, that would have enforced the retention of native vegetation in the green patch alongside Moment Parade, and that linked the Kalgalup Regional Park with the high conservation area south of Harewoods Road. Similar to the previous response provided to Ms Bemrose, given the complexity of the question and our desire to provide a thorough and complete response, we will take that question on notice. Question 2, could Council explain the reasons for this decision and who benefited from substantiating... Could Council please explain the reasons for this decision and who benefited from substituting the special control area that retained the important native vegetation corridor, habitat and 4 threatened fauna species as explained by the Department of Parks and Wildlife in its submissions to the Green Patch as one in the area almost fully developed and links patchy vegetation to areas far apart to be an effective ecological link. Again, given the complexity of the question and our desire to provide a thorough and complete response, we will take that question on notice. Question 3, were Council and all the community who put in a submission to the Local Planning Scheme number 8 in relation to the Green Patch with 250 signatures given a chance to discuss or comment on this decision? If yes, when and who, and if no, why not? Given the complexity of the question and a desire to provide a thorough and complete response, we'll take that question on notice. And question 4, could Council make public all information used to inform its decision? If not, why not? And again, given the complexity of the question and our desire to provide a thorough and complete response, we'll take that question on notice. They are all the questions I have on notice this evening. Are there any questions from the floor? Ms. Kathy Thompson.
Thank you so much for hearing my questions just on notice. I appreciate that. I also appreciate Shire staff who met with me yesterday morning to discuss the dump point site in Boyanup. I come with 3 hats on. I come as the President-elect of the Lions Club. I come as a person who is concerned about Boyanup and the progress in Boyanup, and I come as a founding member of the Boyanup Progress Association. First question. So the Progress Association, the Hugh Kilpatrick Memorial Centre Committee and the Boyanup Lions, on page 194 of the Shire Agenda, were targeted for external consultation during this concept plan development. So on behalf of the Lions Club, we have not been consulted. I was told on Thursday morning after the agenda was set that this was on the agenda. So as far as I'm aware, and I've attended every Lions meeting, there was no discussion with the Lions Club until, as I said, the phone call on Thursday morning. And yes, the Shire staff did meet with me yesterday morning on site to show me what is going to happen. As a member of the Progress Association, I am not aware that there have been any motions made about this proposal. Nicholas is here, he might be able to help me with that, but as far as I'm aware, the general membership of the Progress Association are unaware of any consultation that may have taken place, and it's not minuted anywhere. And I've read the minutes of the Hall Committee meeting that took place on May the 1st. Gordon did come and make a presentation and did tell the Hall Committee about the dump point, did apparently indicated, and I may be wrong, indicated that no Hall land was going to be used. In actual fact, according to Shire staff on site yesterday, that is not correct. There is Hall land that is going to be used. And as far as I can see in the minutes, there was no motion from the Hall Committee actually saying that they agreed with this proposal. All of those 3 bodies in this document, page 194, actually say that we have all agreed to this concept plan. My question is, actually, why weren't we actually consulted properly?
The Chief Executive Officer.
Thank you, Mr Thompson. Through you, Shire President. I guess I'll take the different community associations sort of individually, one by one. So the Shire, I've attended probably at least half a dozen meetings with the Boyne Up Progress Association over the last 18 months, where we've spoken about the sort of the potentially different sites that are all reflected in the agenda item tonight that were under consideration. For the Boyne Up dump point, the Shire has received correspondence from the Boyne Up Progress Association supporting the location of the site.
As a member, I have not had the privilege of that information. I have had no emails from the Progress Association to say that.
I understand that, Mrs Thompson, I guess, but we would take a letter from the Boyne Up Progress Association on face value, not aware of what conversations might have occurred within the Progress Association, but I can confirm we do have correspondence from the Progress Association supporting the location. In terms of the meeting of the Hugh Kilpatrick Hall Committee, not only did I attend the meeting, the Shire President attended the meeting and our Economic Development Officer attended the meeting. There was some discussion about the process, I guess, that the Shire had been through, and my understanding of the minutes, which I have a copy of it, was that it's supported strongly by the Hugh Kilpatrick Hall Committee. There certainly was at least one member of the committee that didn't support it, but my clear understanding of what's referred to in the minutes was that the committee supported it.
Well, I'm sorry, Gordon, but I've got the minutes here and nowhere does it say that there was any kind of vote on that. So that's how it is.
Yeah.
So let's deal with the Lions Club.
So again, I can't be specific on the dates, but also my understanding, and I'm the author of, or not the author, I'm the reviewer of the report. My understanding is the consultation did occur in the past with the Lions Club and yourself.
We wrote to you last year saying that we did not agree. We were not in favour of the dump point going behind the hall and near our facility. And we received a letter back from you.
Correct.
Saying that that community groups would be consulted. And as I said, the first I actually knew that it was coming to council was that I got a phone call from Janelle on Thursday morning. I jumped up and down and demanded an on-site meeting because I needed to know exactly what the plans were. And I haven't had any time to take it back to my members. So I do want the Shire councillors to know that I feel the consultation process hasn't been good enough, but thank you very much for that answer.
Thank you, Mr Thompson.
In the actual concept plan, there's no plan or costings for the Lions Club to have new access to their shed. We've been told, I was told on the ground yesterday morning that we're gonna get a new access, but it hasn't been planned and it hasn't been costed. Also, I was told that the hall are going to get some better parking, but there's no plans to be seen and I'm unaware of the costings on that. So my question is, why aren't we getting some detailed information so then as community members and community groups we can make a good decision and give you good information about what we want?
Thank you, Mr Thompson. The Chief Executive Officer.
Thank you, Mrs Thompson. So this item on the agenda tonight deliberately dealt specifically with off-road vehicles and the dump point. The intent, and sorry, I missed it to respond to part of your question. There is a very, very small component of the hall land that would be impacted by the dump point. I think it's part of the screening, which would be, I think, around about 3 metres long by about 1 metre wide. Right, at the moment, the drawings that are contained within the agenda item are concept only, and they were created for the Shire to be able to provide some cost estimates that would be subject to council approval, would be included in the budget. The other part of the proposal that you refer to in upgrading the functionality of the parking behind the Hugh Kilpatrick Hall, the impact of the drainage swale, and having a better outcome for the Lions Club in terms of the access and parking and crossover from Bridge Street is a different item that's contained in the draft council budget and reflected in the draft corporate business plan that'll be considered later in different processes. But tonight's report dealt specifically with just off-road vehicle camping areas and the dump point, but there are further proposals in the corporate business plan and the draft budget to do exactly the things that were discussed with you with officers.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you. Next question. We, like everyone in the community, supports an overnight parking area and supports a dump point in our community. Why are the Shire not looking at some long-term plans instead of congesting furthermore our central business district? Why are the Shire not considering the, say, Lot 1 Southwestern Highway that could be developed for increased parking for the markets and for the football, which is above capacity at the moment? It could also be a really nice place for overnight parking. It could be maybe even a good place for the dump point. I understand there are problems with the sewerage there, but when you're talking about spending nearly $500,000 and congesting the central business district of Boyanup, it makes sense to me to be looking further out where, you know, if the same as Capel, if overnight parking gets to be a real thing, instead of having a little tiny area where we can park 7 vans, why aren't we looking for a place where we could develop it into a great big space and have lots of caravans parking there? I would see that, and also this site, Lot 1 Southwestern Highway, would be good to extend the parking for the Memorial Park activities, the markets, the football. So why would not the Shire look at long-term, good, solid planning that isn't congesting our centre of the central business district?
Thank you, Ms Thompson, for the question. There have been discussions with proponents around potentially using that site and others to operate a site, but at this point in time, nothing has come from that.
I think
but it's something that has certainly been on our radar.
I would think it would be a good thing for Boyanup if we could think about getting things out of that congested area. Thank you. Last question. So we're going to get a dump point somehow or other. So if a lot of money is going to be spent for visitors to be able to dump their waste, and this comes as a community member and as the Lions Club president-elect, why can't we get toilets in Fettlers Park for our own waste so we could actually run events in that park that last more than a couple of hours? And, you know, we'd basically have somewhere to go to the toilet. That would be great.
Thank you, Ms Thompson. The council has, as part of the budget this year, approved upgrades to our toilet systems around, and Lions Park toilet was one of those, which needed a bit of love. In fact, it was our highest patronised toilet in the entire Shire. So there's been some improvements that are going to occur there, or have
Excellent.
occurred.
Thank you.
In terms of Fettlers Park, there's ongoing discussions around that place, as well as the foreshore down by Lions Park, which are yet to happen with the community as well. But it's something we are discussing with state and federal representatives around what commitments could be in there and some master planning going forward.
Right, because we've had already 2 plans for the development of Fettlers Park,
Yes.
and last I heard that they were all off the table. So I'm wrong. They're not
off
something?
the table. They're just parked at the
They're
moment. They're
shelved.
still included as part of our long-term financial plan, but there are aspects of it,
Right.
such as the larger heritage precinct plan that was there, which
Okay.
essentially have been. Yes.
So $450,000 for a dump point and overnight parking in Boyanup gets precedent over maybe 200,000, I think Sean said, for toilets in Fettlers Park for our community and for the ratepayers. It doesn't add up for me, but
I'll
thank you
take
very
that as
much.
a comment. Thank you, Ms
Thank you for
Thompson.
your time.
Are there any other questions, Ms Donna Brown?
Thank you. Thank you for receiving these public questions without notice from Michael Tichbon. As the councillors and the CEO are aware, Michael Tichbon submitted a proposal for the RV dump point in Boyanup last Friday to be considered on the railway land at Turner Street, just off South Western Highway, where there would be adequate room for the turnaround of caravans and adequate room for caravans to stay overnight, as well as being in very close proximity to the post office, general store, chemist, hairdresser, etc. It's also directly adjacent to the sewerage pumping station, which could be readily connected to the dump point. Quote, Shire officers, Economic Development, Engineering and Governance considered a range of potential sites across the Boyanup town site before recommending the rear of Hall site. Preliminary concept designs have been developed for the proposed dump point at the rear of the hall and subject to council support as the location. The Shire has advised that, quote, further consultation will occur regarding final designs, access, screening, parking, functionality, etc. Why has consultation with the wider Boyanup community, who are the ratepayers, not been sought before this matter comes before council, or proceeds any further regarding the final location being at the rear of the Hugh Kilpatrick Memorial Hall? Michael set out the history behind the extra land retained behind the hall, which he believes should be retained as overflow parking for functions at the hall. Is it proposed to also have the caravan park at the rear of the hall, near to the dump point? Is any area of the Hugh Kilpatrick Memorial Hall site going to be used for the dump point or for an overnight caravan stopover? Is the current plan to use only the road verge? Read the Shire's agenda this evening, set out on page 194, consultation and engagement. Were the residents of Bridge Street consulted about this proposal, the nearby neighbours? And if not, why not? Or are you proposing to put forward a foregone conclusion before nearby residents have at least an opportunity to comment? Michael has requested that the area of Turner Street be assessed and was disappointed that his Turner Street proposal was dismissed. The response was that dealing with the Public Transport Authority, the PTA, has been frustrating and that gaining approval from PTA for anything is near impossible. It's a pity that this important matter has been slotted into the too hard basket. Both Dardanup and Donnybrook seem to be able to utilise the railway land in their shires, in their town sites, for other uses. Why isn't the Shire of Capel able to manage this as well? Will the Shire of Capel please reconsider, as per Michael Tichbon's formal request, contacting the PTA to seek the possibility of a long-term lease in what is seen to be a much more suitable location? Will the councillors please consider deferring this matter this evening so that the Turner Street proposal and others mentioned tonight and the public can be considered and the PTA be contacted re a potential lease?
Thank you, Ms Brown. It seems that was more of a comment than a question.
No, that's a question. Will the councillors please consider deferring this matter this evening?
Well, that's up to the council to decide when it debates it. I can't say yes or no.
No, so I'm just asking the floor tonight.
It's up to, yes. So that's what I'm saying. It's more of a comment than a question.
But there's other questions.
I can take it as that is, and council can decide whether it wishes to proceed in whichever manner it does.
But there are other questions that I've asked.
Yes.
And I would like them answered.
So that were in sort of
notice,
the bulk of it.
Right.
We can take that on notice because there was some in there. But in terms of it being considered, it's a possibility if council wishes to proceed down that line.
And will the council, will the staff consider following up with the PTA with the possibility of a lease on the railway land and that Turner Street be considered as an option?
It's, as I said, it's a possibility. Council will make a decision based on what it feels, in which way to proceed this evening.
Right.
And if it decides that it may wish to go down that line, a direction like that can be made.
Okay. Right. Thank you. I've got another question, but I might just let Penny go and I'll have a break. That's okay.
Sure. Okay. Ms Penny David?
Thanks for taking my question without notice. I'm just referring to the response that I received earlier, and I wrote down some notes when I sat down, and Mr. President, you said that authorities produced reports based on sand composition. So that's what I've been asking for 12 months. So I don't know whether that was a mistake, that wording. But when Mrs. Horsfall asked a question, you said that the full submission would be available to her for in terms of the Aboriginal and cultural investigation. So I would like to see the full submissions that went to all the authorities, not the summarised submissions in the back of the RAR. Is that possible to receive those?
Yes, we can make those available to you should you wish.
Thank you. Do I need to follow it up, or will that just happen?
We'll take that as an action and see what can be provided, and make sure you're got in contact with.
Okay, so it's in your court. Thank you.
Yes. Ms. Donna Brown, do you want to continue your second question?
Thank you. Last meeting, both Penny and I gave a deposition on 148 Skippings Road, and I noticed that Penny's questions have been answered in the agenda, and I was just going to ask, with my deposition, are the questions going to be answered as well?
The Chief Executive Officer.
Through you, Shire President. So, Mrs. Brown, I absolutely have a copy of your email that you sent through as a deposition. My read of it was that there wasn't actually any questions to respond to. In actual fact, it was just it was your deposition and nothing that required a response to any specific question. It was simply as a deposition. If I've misinterpreted that, I'm happy to go back and review. But that is the reason why there was no response. It wasn't taken that there was any questions contained within to respond to. It was taken as a deposition.
Right, I'm a bit surprised with that. I don't have a copy with me this evening, but I did ask a lot of questions about the Shire from the Shire staff, and I think I listed all the questions at the base, so I'm happy to resend that.
If we've misinterpreted that, then we'll look into that and get in contact with you just to clarify. And if there are any questions, then we'll make sure they're provided in the response to questions on notice in the next agenda.
Thank you. And regarding 148 Skippings Road, this is without notice. It's just off the top of my head tonight. But hearing about the communications re EILs and to the public, it's regarding advertising. I don't believe full advertising has been undertaken of EILs, and it was not advertised in the newspaper, and that is as per our 2016 Shire's Gazetted Law. EILs must be publicly advertised in newspapers. So the Shire was written to, I'm sure, in 2021 when there was failure to do this. The Shire acknowledged this, that the public newspaper advertising should have been undertaken. So why then does this get raised and then dropped? So will the Shire undertake to advertise all future EILs in the newspaper? And why wasn't it done with 148 Skippings Road and also the recent EIL, which is significant, Lot 287 Southwestern Highway, Quindenal?
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Extractive industry licences and all planning applications will be advertised in accordance with the relevant statutory guidelines and regulations. I'm happy to review the advertising, though, that occurred for Skippings Road to ensure that it was done as is required. The information provided to me, though, is that it was, but I can review that again for you if you wish.
Okay. I can send a letter in regarding the requirement for EILs to be advertised in the newspaper, so that the public are aware. We don't have the Boyne Up Post anymore. Letters don't appear to be going out to every person and the general public. I also make a plea with the advertising of EILs specifically on the website that they be open to the due date, but the 2 weeks later for government departments and the LCDC to also be able to access them, but also identifying names instead of it just development application, put the name there. The general public don't know to go onto Planning Services website and look at ones currently open.
Sure.
And a descriptor, if a more detailed description just showing the location instead of development application would be appreciated. Not all EILs are advertised fully and openly to make it easy for members of the public to access.
We'll take that feed.
Thank you.
All right, are there any further public questions? No. Applications for leave of absence. There was one approved leave for Councillor McCleary for this meeting, but he's here this evening, so welcome back, Peter. Are there any requests for leave? I believe I just called you by your first name instead of by your title, Councillor, so apologies for that. Yeah, point of order. Declarations of interest. I've received a few, so first in 13.1 from Councillor Sharp and from myself, both impartiality interests in the recommendations from the Bushfire Advisory Committee, and a declaration of interest, impartiality in 20.1 from myself, as I was a member of the project steering group. Notice for items for discussion behind closed doors. There is one this evening, item 20.1, agribusiness precinct, demand analysis, site identification and concept master planning. Confirmation of the minutes of the ordinary meeting of the Council for the 24th of April 2024. Is there a mover for those minutes? Councillor Sharp. Is there a seconder? Councillor Mogg. Councillor Sharp, anything on those minutes? Councillor Mogg.
I've reserved my right, thank you.
Is there any discussion on those minutes? No? Councillor Sharp, do you wish to close? Put those minutes to the vote. Those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. Announcements by the presiding member. There is one this evening. Under Standing Order 5.8, distinguished visitors, I'll request that this individual comes to the table and joins me in the CEO's chair for the duration of this item. Mr. Trevor Pearman, would you please join me? After 26 fantastic years of service and dedication to the Shire of Capel, a trusted piece of the furniture is finally calling it time and heading off to retirement. Trevor Pearman joined us in 1998, and his work at the Shire has always been more than just his job. His dedication, passion and genuine care for both staff and community have been truly inspiring. Trevor's smile, emphasis on respect and empathy, and the occasional overindulgence in chocolate, and keeping things light-hearted, and his team spirit up. Trevor's contribution over his 26 years at the Shire of Capel have been significant. Starting in our Parks and Gardens team, taking a brief hiatus, and then returning to eventually become our building supervisor, Trevor has played a vital role in service delivery, capital works programs, and fostering a positive culture change within the organisation. Trevor's departure marks a sad day for us all, but he leaves behind a legacy of hard work and strong relationships. On behalf of the Shire of Capel, we wish you a wonderful retirement and hope you enjoy every moment of it. Well done, Trevor, and thank you very much. Say something if you like.
Don't really have much to say, except that I have no regrets of spending the last 26 years of my life here. It actually has been a little more, because I did put in a stint before I thought that there might be greener pastures, but I came back for even more. But it's been a pleasure, thank you.
After 26 years, Trevor.
Right, we move to... So I'll just hang on a second. Now move to petitions, deputations and presentations. There's one presentation this evening from Mr Ian Cocker on item 13.3, Bushfire Advisory Committee motions.
Mr. President, councillors, thanks for the opportunity. I must admit I was quite baffled by the responses received to the two questions that I put earlier. For those of you that were at the BFAC meeting that night, if you really think that the BFAC committee's response to quite a large report on the bushfire mitigation notice was purely to realign one date by 3 days, I think it was, and that's the entire consolidated response of all the guys around that thing. I've only got 25 years experience in the bushfire brigade. There's a guy sitting around that table with a lot more than that, and all we came up with was 3 days. We didn't discuss this, and yet this has now slipped through to the keeper and come to council, and council are now going to vote on this tonight. Let's just talk about the whole thing of a solid fuel barbecue and a pizza oven. Currently in our mitigation notice, it states that you can't light a barbecue or a pizza oven if the fire danger rating is high or above. And then it talks about outdoor cooking and campfires are not permitted during the prohibited period. In other words, you have a restricted period either side and a prohibited period in the middle. So during the prohibited period, 15 December to 31 March, you can't light an outdoor cooking or a camping fire. And on any day when the fire danger rating is high or above. In other words, either side of the prohibited period, in the restricted period. Now, if we take this section out, this first paragraph out, and we just say, okay, that's now campfires and fire pits, and it talks about only outdoor cooking and campfires are not being permitted. I had a word with Ricky Southgate from the Department of Fire and Emergency Services, and I said to him, Ricky, run through to me the difference between a fire pit and a barbecue. And he said, well, a barbecue is a contained steel structure with a grate on it. And I said, in a fire pit? He said, well, it's fire like in a pit or it can be in a steel structure. And I said, so if you take a fire pit and you put a grid on it, is it a barbecue? He goes, technically yes. So we now have this problem where there appears to be no real definition as to what a barbecue is and what a fire pit is. So if we take this away now and we say to our ratepayers, okay, you can, we're not actually saying it in so many words, we're just taking that out and it's implying that you can now light a barbecue in a pizza oven, no matter, unless you've got a total fire ban. We're now allowing anyone within the Shire, in any of the areas within the Shire, to light up one of these structures unless there's a total fire ban. So let's just take our patch down at Peppy Grove Beach, where I'm the captain down there. We have a number of lots that back onto a very, very sensitive foreshore reserve and a wetland reserve. Some of them have got a 2-metre path, concrete path, which we'd be hard-pressed to get a vehicle down. A lot of lots back onto those reserves via cul-de-sacs that we don't have PAWs to get hoses even through in the event of having a fire. And on the other side, on the wetland, there is no access other than a very sandy track through the adjacent farm. Now, we have a lot of tourists coming around to Peppermint Grove Beach now and using Airbnbs. They don't understand the fire rating system. They don't understand. I've honestly knocked on a number of doors and said, put that out, when it hasn't been the correct conditions to light a fire. Now, we're just going to let anyone light a fire down there, Stratham, Jalorup, Rosecliff Park, Aubrey Farm Estate, up the back of Boyne Up and all those large lots, you're just going to put potentially us under a lot more strain because it only takes one spark to light a fire. And we've seen how devastating your fire was in Dalyella this year. And man, that stretched us. That took us as far as we could go this year. We had brigades, as you know, come down all the way from Armidale. So I really would not like to see council pass what is proposed tonight, because your BFAC committee, your technical expertise have not discussed this. It needs to be workshopped in detail. Another thing that is really concerning, the bushfire mitigation notice on the first page talks about Section 33 of the Bushfires Act, saying we must be compliant with Section 33, which is true. When it comes to the wood fire barbecue section, it doesn't state a section of the Bushfire Act. Technically, it is not Section 33 that applies there. It's Section 25. Now, if you remove this, which is proposed to be removed tonight, you need to read Section 25.1 of Section 25.1 of the Bushfire Act, which prohibits the burning of fires in certain conditions. It also sets out with regards to fires for the purpose of camping or cooking. And in talking to the DFS representative, he said you've got to really be careful of that thing that says for cooking, because what is a pizza oven and what is a barbecue? It's for cooking. So it states here that you can't light a fire except in accordance and subject to the following provisions. A fire for the purposes of camping or cooking shall not be lit within 3 meters of a log or stump, and unless and until a space of ground around the site of the fire having a radius of 3 meters from the site as the center, cleared of all bush and other flammable materials. There are pizza ovens down in Peppermint Grove Beach, wedged in the corner with bushes over them, 2 meters from the Foreshore Reserve. There is no way any of those structures can comply the way they are. It also says, and for when any day or any period of that day, the fire danger forecast by the Bureau of Met in Perth says that it's catastrophic, extreme, or high. A fire shall not be lit on that day. So in other words, if we remove this and we say to our ratepayers, you can light a barbecue and you can light a pizza oven any day of the year unless there's a total fire ban, technically it's not in alignment with Section 25.1 of the Bushfire Act. The Bushfire Act sits above this. So my concern is BFAC have not discussed this. BFAC need to workshop this, not just through a BFAC meeting. We need to workshop this. We also need to talk to our neighbours. Bunbury City Council and Busselton City Council
Apologies,
have a lot
Mr.
firmer stance on this than we do.
Apologies, Mr. Cocker, just 1 minute. Warning.
Okay. And again, if I just might raise that we've had a lot of people talking, giving questions tonight that have really stepped over 5 minutes. So if I've only got 5 minutes to talk about this very important thing, then okay. Our neighbours have got a much firmer stance on this than we have. There needs to be parity between the local governments as well. And the reason being is because you've got people coming in and going out of here. You've got these rules, they've got those rules. Honestly, it needs to be consolidated. There's a lot of work needs to be done in getting this right. We haven't got it right. All I can do is, therefore, in the strongest terms, urge you to amend the recommendation BF 2024/3 in item 13.3 to ensure that the bushfire mitigation notice continues as in previous years to prohibit the use of wood solid fire barbecues and pizza ovens when the fire danger rating is higher above. Leave it where it is at the moment. Give BFAC another chance to have a bite of this, and we'll come back with a detailed recommendation for you. We haven't got that at the moment. Council, don't do this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cocker. There are no motions of which previous notice has been given, and there are no questions of which previous notice has been given. Move to Chief Executive Officer reports. 13.1, Committees of Council minutes. Is there a mover for those minutes? Councillor Mogg. The seconder. The Deputy President. Councillor Mogg.
Thank you, President. I move the motion as read. Thank you.
The Deputy President? No? Is there any discussion on that recommendation? No? Councillor Mogg, you wish to close? I'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? That's carried unanimously. 13.2, RV overnight rest areas and dump point, proposal for Boynup and Capel sites. Is there a mover for that item? Councillor McCleary. Seconded, Councillor Noonan. Councillor McCleary.
Thank you, Mr. President. We've had a few questions raised about the particular one in Boynup, and I know there'll probably be some further discussions doing this, but in general sense, RV setups in Capel and Boynup are an essential part to the community. It offers a stock that attracts economic wealth to those two towns. So I think that's the intention of this motion, and I'll leave it to the debate and close later.
Councillor Noonan.
With the mover's permission, I would like to suggest a couple of amendments to the motion as it's written.
All right. Your amendments, Councillor?
Thank you, Mr. President. On 13.2, I'd like to have that adjusted to be 13.2A, where it reads, supports the proposed location of the new Boynup RV dump point. If that could be altered to read, supports the inclusion, or supports a proposed new Boynup RV dump point and the inclusion of a budget allocation. So, yep, supports a proposed new Boynup RV dump point and the inclusion of a budget allocation consideration as part of the... Yep, so that's part A. Part B. So that's that first one is 2A. Yep. Then there's 2B. And 2B is requests the CEO to facilitate a survey of the Boynup residents and ratepayers in regard to their opinion of where the best location for a new RV dump point and overnight rest area might be. And then point C, requests the CEO to contact ARC Infrastructure in relation to the possibility of securing a long-term lease for Lot 2 on the corner, of Southwest Highway and Turner Street.
Anything further, Councillor?
No, that's it.
I might just suggest to you now before I move on that you might need to change recommendation 3 as it's inconsistent with your amendments, because recommendation 3 is approving the proposed location for the rest area. So you might want to do similar to what you did to recommendation 1.
Yes, yep. That makes sense.
Sorry, 2A. Happy with that, Councillor?
Yes. Yep. Thank you very much.
Given it's a significant change, I'll ask that to be an amendment. So I'll ask for a seconder to that amendment. Councillor Mogg. Councillor Noonan.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I'd like to thank all the members of the Boyne Up community who have, for a long time, thought about this. I think that a dump point is very, very important. I think that Boyne Up needs one. I think it deserves one. I think it would be a great facility for the Shire and for Boyne Up in particular. My concerns with the original motion were that I had concerns about the location, specifying a location, and also concerns about the communication. So I'll take those 2 points one at a time. First of all, the location. On Bridge Street, there's a curve. The sight lines are not clear. It's opposite the cattle yards. It gets a lot of traffic from heavy vehicles. It's often used as a shortcut speedway to get from Railway Road through to the South West Highway. Now, I'm sure traffic calming could be put in to make some of those issues safer. However, someone with an RV pulling out from behind the hall, looking to the north, is still going to have difficulty seeing vehicles approaching because of the curve of the road. Another concern is that its location directly opposite the cattle yards. That your dump point is often it's the first impression that anyone gets of a community, because they've just driven into town. They've come all the way from Tasmania or Victoria or Queensland or wherever. They've driven in. They've heard about Boyne Up, and they've stopped to empty. The first thing they've got to do is empty the cassette. They stop. They get out of the car, and they're immediately hit with the smell, the dust, the flies, and that's their first impression of Boyne Up. And then they look at each other and they say, "Are we going to stop here for a coffee, or are we going to head along to the next place?" And on that first impression, Donnybrook starts to look quite attractive. Okay, so I think it's the wrong place from a sales point of view, a marketing point of view. I think there are far better places in that regard, and I take Michael Tichborne's suggestion that the corner of Turner Street would be a far better location, given that you get out of the car, do your business, and you see just down the road, this is a community which has got a bushfire brigade. It's got a St John's First ambulance centre, so it's a community. And there's the Boyne Up Rail Heritage Museum, which is, I think, the premium tourist attraction for Boynup that can be developed for the town. And it's on the entrance, signposts on the way into Boynup and so on. So I think that would make a lot more sense in terms of promoting or selling the town and encouraging people to stop, spend a bit of time there. My second point was on the issue of communication, and I think that, I genuinely appreciate the work that the CEO and the Shire staff have done. It is a difficult job contacting, doing any major infrastructure build or proposal, because inevitably there are going to be people who like the idea and people who might not be so keen on the idea, some who like this location, some who don't. I think you've done a good job in speaking to most community organisations, so for example the BPA. However, I think in these instances the residents and the ratepayers and the residents of any potential site must be given a heads up, and I think it's unfortunate for us because we've copped criticism in the past for our failures in the way that we communicate, and it's unfortunate that for some people, residents who are not members of the BPA or the Lions or the Hall Committee or whatever, but they love living in Boynup, they love living on Bridge Street, despite the cattle yards opposite, that they've only just found out about this in the last couple of days, and they found out it by a phone call from another neighbour saying, "Hey, do you know what they're planning to do behind the hall?"
Sorry, Councillor Noon, you've got about 30 seconds. Do you want more time?
No, that'll be right.
Sure.
I'll wrap up. So I think we have to get better at consulting more widely, not just the organisations but also the residents and the ratepayers. I was considering deferring this motion item to do that, but I think that giving points A, B and C, the survey and contacting ARC Infrastructure, that it helps to give the staff some of that direction that hopefully will make the communication with the Boynup community better. And we want a dump point that the community wants to have, and that's really basically the gist of this motion. I'd rather see this than to kick it further down the road. So thank you, Mr. President.
Councillor Mogg.
Thank you. I'd like to thank Councillor Noonan for bringing forward the amendment, and I concur with his sentiments. It aligns with the concerns that we heard from residents tonight, and by doing this and having a look at other areas and to be mindful of Boynup's small town site and being at big events at the hall and parking not available out the front and Bridge Street and the rear gets used, we have to be careful not to, erosion and congestion of a community space that's there and available. I like the amendment, and hopefully it gives us a better business plan, design and costing and budget as well moving forward. And again, it doesn't, by deferring it, make time pass on this matter. Thank you.
Are there any speakers to the amendment? Question, Councillor Cleary?
Okay, looking at the amendment before we vote on it, I just had a couple of questions in particular item A, where it says draft annual budget. Some of the considerations that we're getting could be quite timely, like taking more than a year, and I'm just a bit concerned whether keeping that item in there, the only thing that we'll be doing is an investigation next year for that part of it, and I want to know, is that a reasonable consideration in timelines of how we'd set this up before we vote on this item?
I suppose it would determine on the outcome of the consultation with the community, because if it landed exactly where is proposed, then that's a quick turnaround. However, if the community is requesting that it moves to a different site, especially if it does require a lease process, there could be delays. I suppose it's up to council if it takes this as it is and there are delays, it'll need to just then rectify any budget allocation through the mid-year budget process, in which case it would become either carry forward or be repurposed. Do you want to add to that, Director? Or? Is that it, Councillor McCleary? Yep. Then any speakers to the item? Councillor Ferguson?
Thank you, Mr. President. Look, I'll support the motion, but with significant reservations. The consultation process that's incorporated in the resolution opens up a Pandora's box because it doesn't define how that consultation will ultimately be assessed. Now, we were advised by the CEO that in the course of questions and answers in respect to questions on notice or not on notice earlier, that a consultation process of a significant nature had been taken, but not to the satisfaction of one individual present here today and not to the satisfaction, it would seem, of several councillors. Now, what defines adequate community consultation in respect to this matter? And I think Councillor McCleary is on the money here, literally. This matter will now going to take another year. And the consequences, because the vagueness of that community consultation motion, or part of that motion, is such that we may strive with great difficulty to get a reasonable assessment on what is considered to be appropriate community consultation. In fact, if you can't ask the Buoyant Up Progress Association for a view and they give a written response and say yes, what else do you need? But it seems we need more. And if that's what the community and the council wants, well, let's do it, but it'll take another year. Thank you.
Sorry, the Deputy President.
Thank you, Mr. President. I like the terminology used by Councillor Ferguson. I tend to support the amendment, but with considerable reservations, and for a couple of reasons. One is that I don't think it's necessary to have dumped the overnight rest area into the same situation as the dump point site. As the way I've interpreted from the discussions that have been had and what we've heard from the community, there seems to be little to no reservation on the use of the site that has been identified in this report. In addition, I respect that there was a proposal in the PTA land in regards to the dump point. I do share similar concerns around some issues raised with the level of consultation that's occurred, but I'm concerned that the motion or the amendment perhaps misinterprets what the particular issue is with the site that has been assessed. My interpretation of the concern is that there's opposition to the suggested site. So it's more about consulting on that site rather than opening the Pandora box, is what's been said, by sending it back out to the community to identify a site. I mean, it's the first attachment of the agenda item was 4 site assessments, which are included as an attachment to this report. So the rear of Kilpatrick Memorial Centre Hall was one of them, 73 to 77 Bridge Street was another, the Diggers Rest at 104 Southwest Highway and Fettlers Park. So in my perspective, the Shire has identified some possible sites and has made a decision on which would be preferable from the perspective of, you know, challenges like the PTA. And I mean, we talk about just how difficult it is to work with the PTA. I mean, they could have almost derailed the entire sale yards, and they probably almost did. So the roofing on the sale yards, amongst other things. So, first of all, I don't see any objections towards the rest site, and for some reason we're lumping that into the same treatment as the dump point, and that needs to go out for further conversation. I've had conversations with the BPA. I sympathise with the concerns that have been raised, but I'm not happy with how B sits in the consultation process. I think the Shire has identified 4 potential sites. People are going to put different sites forward. It needs to be a constructive consultation process. We can't be a free-for-all. And I would not like to see the overnight rest area put into that same category, because as I see it, that's been out there for a while. That site's been identified. These are actually 2 different things, and it's actually, as you know, in Capel, they are 2 different sites. They don't have to be together, and in fact, sometimes it's preferable that they're not together, because you don't want to sleep where you dump your waste, to be honest, and people don't want to sleep where other people dump their waste. But you know, one of the key reasons why the hall was considered was because it's in our road reserve, it's our property, it's our land, and there was, it's not flowing right. The amendment's not flowing right, and it's trying to do a couple of different things in the same point. So, again, I tend to support it because I do agree with the premise that we need to do some additional consultation on the dump point. I'm happy with where the rest area is, but I don't know whether or not. I think this is quite messy. That's why I'm a bit confused, because there's so many different things to unpack in each of the 3 different points. So I'm just going to leave it there. I mean, I support the amendment, but with reservation.
Are there any other speakers to the item? Amendment, sorry. Councillor Dillon.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, I'm of a similar mind to Councillor Ferguson and our Deputy President. I think we're trying to bite off more than we can chew with those 3 amendments all lumped in together. Yes, we need a dump point in Boyna. We know it. I've had significant contact with members of the community over the last 48 hours or so. And I've said while being sympathetic to their various opinions and ideas, we've got the information that says it's the best site at the moment, and I've said to all I've spoken to that I do think it's probably the best place to put it. It's off the main drag, it's our own land, it shouldn't impinge on too many people, etc. But I do agree that there maybe should have been a slightly wider community consultation. In saying that, I think point B there is very wishy-washy and is not going to achieve what we probably need it to. Yeah, I'm very reluctant to support it as is. I would almost rather defer the whole item than vote for that amendment as it stands there, or I'd be happy to see another amendment which I'd maybe consider. But right now, I probably can't agree to that amendment as it stands. It's trying to achieve too much in a too broad a way. It needs to be far more focused. Thank you.
Are there any other speakers to the item? Councillor McClure, yeah, you can speak to the amendment. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. President. Look, I concur with my fellow councillor Dillon in that there are concerns. I don't think item 3 should have been altered at all. I think we've nailed down a location for the RV overnight rest area. The issue is around a dump point. Now, Bailing Up has an RV stop, no dump point. You could work in that thing, and then at least it gets something happening in town. As to the comment of how dump points work, I've just spent 2.5 months driving across the country and visiting many a dump point, and they're varied in the way they operate. Some are behind fences, some are behind sheds, some are down things. That's and dumping things into a dump point, you're going to get smells anyway. So you're talking about flies. There's flies bloody everywhere. Excuse my French, but I don't think that's the issue, and that's not the first thing I ever did when I went into a town. I went and had a look around the town, walked, had a coffee. The last thing I want to do is do a dump point and then go and have a coffee. That aside, I think I'd hate to see it lost. I don't agree with the amendment as it stands. I'm going to vote against it. I think there's some other things. It's purely the dump point and its location that seems to be the issue on here, as pointed out with the Deputy President, but I can't vote for this amendment as it stands.
Are there any other speakers to the amendment? Councillor Tarantroy.
I agree with Councillor Dillon, Councillor Shoshano and Councillor McCleary. I know. And Ferguson. I agree that it's about the dump site consultation of the actual space that is proposed, and I don't think that we should be having a survey to delay something for another year. Yeah, I can't support this amendment either. Thank you.
Are there any other speakers? I think it's only myself and Councillor Sharp left. Just the call, or I'll have a crack.
Yeah, this is pretty tricky actually. I thought it was going to be a little bit more simple than this. Obviously, I'm really big on community consultation, having had quite a bit of experience in my own community about various things, and I understand the angst of the community feeling that they can't speak for what they want in their community, or don't feel that they have had enough opportunity to speak for what they really feel passionate about in their community. Obviously, something like this really has to take into account other plans that have potentially been made as a part of the changes that will be coming to Boyanup as it develops. I don't think even the Boyanup bypass has been mentioned anywhere in what I've heard here talk tonight, and the changes that that may bring to the community and the future plans of it, the layout of it and how it's going to work. We all want to see sustainable development and we want to know that we're going to be spending a lot of money on something that's not going to be modified because it's going to be inappropriate in a year or so's time. I really feel that money needs to be well spent on something as important as this, and I understand what Councillor Noonan has spoken about here, but I also feel, now looking it up in red on the screen, that maybe there is a little bit of a conflict with the RV dump point and also where eventually a rest area is going to be. So I'm fairly conflicted about this, and I guess if I feel conflicted, then I maybe should not vote for it, purely because it seems to be a little bit untidy, and I really feel we can do a lot better for that community. So yeah, that's my point there.
All right, there being no other speakers available, I'll have a... So, it's quite an interesting one, and I do agree with a bit of the intention that Councillor Noonan is trying to put across, but I don't think it's the right way to proceed at this point in time. I think what would probably be a better solution is to return to the substantive motion and endorse the recommendation as our preferred site and way forward. However, if we return to that, I would seek to move an amendment that makes conditions 1 and 3, which are the sites in Boyanup, subject to further consultation with the community, particularly around the site planning, and then also direct conversation with those residents. I think we focus on this one site, we have that consultation, we make that subject to a further report, and then we go from there. I think that'd be the best way to proceed, rather than going back to the drawing board again, because this is something that definitely since I've been on council since 2017, it's been mentioned multiple times that it's something that Boynup is seeking. And it certainly is something that's been discussed well before that. In terms of the consultation, there has been quite a number of it. Members here have been to various meetings in the town site, and from the BPA, I've been to the hall meeting. There was generally broad support, while not moved as a motion and just... I'm sorry, there's no interjections from the public. While there was discussion of it at the meeting, it wasn't voted on, but there was general support for it, particularly at the site. Even the op shop actually had very good support for it, who are a member of the hall group, because they see that increased business coming and potentially using the... Miss Thompson, if another interjection, and I will ask you to leave the chamber. So I have had support from those, and that's the feedback I had from that night. So look, what I think we need to do is just take stock of the item. We support it in principle. We look at putting towards a budget allocation so we can move forward. In terms of the overnight RV rest area, that's for the financial year after next anyway. So if there's further things that come out of that, we can look at that then anyway. So if we return to the substantive, I think we'd look to potentially making those conditions around this site subject to some sort of consultation. But this way we can at least move forward in a manner. But just in reply to Councillor Noonan's comments about getting out opposite a sale yard, I tell you what, it might just be me, but if I was 10 years old and I pulled up in the car with the family on a trip, and opposite was a sale yard and there's cattle in there, you know, bleating and going on, and all the noise and the smell, I think it'd be fantastic, you know. So I reckon there'd be something great, you know, like this is a bit different from your regular country town. But I think certainly having it located in town is the location, and from the general consensus from the business side of town as well is that they are seeking that stay and dump to be directly in town, because whether they dump their stuff and decide to move on, at least there's an increased chance of them potentially purchasing something in town before they run out. And that's what this is about. It's trying to capture those people who are just driving all the way through and aren't even stopping. So, and as we know, with the Bunbury Outer Ring Road under construction, when that's finished, if you're coming from Perth and want to go down the South West Highway, Boynup will be the first town south of Perth where you slow down to 40 k's an hour. So I think we've got a real opportunity to capture those people and increase trade in town that isn't there at the moment. A bit of evidence from that is when we put in the RV dump point here at Capel. A few weeks later, I went over and spoke to the IGA, the owners there, and discussed had they noticed anything, and they said 40% bump on weekends. So that was just their feedback off the cuff a couple of years ago. I'd be interested to know what it's doing now. But it's interesting, you go down to the Capel stop some nights and there's 15 plus caravans there. There must be some of that flowing back into town. So agree with the intention, and certainly agree with going back and just touching base with the community again, especially those direct residents on Bridge Street. But I think we can return to the substantive, and I'd seek to put some clauses in place so that we have that consultation while endorsing this as our preferred location going forward. All right, there being no further speakers available, I'll return to the mover of the amendment, Councillor Noonan.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, councillors, for your consideration. I appreciate the thought that you've all put into this. I would make the point that at any stage, any of us, well, apart from me, and I think it was Councillor Mogg, could have the opportunity to suggest an amendment to the amendment, or as Councillor Kitchen has done, to foreshadow a return to the substantive motion and then foreshadow an amendment to that. We've got the opportunity to defer it, however, that's kicking it down the road, and that would delay the project. I don't accept that any of the process of surveying, having a survey of the community, consulting with the community, is going to delay it at all. It certainly won't delay it for another year. I think that's furphy. I have absolute confidence in the capacity of the CEO to conduct a survey within 3 weeks, because it doesn't have to be. It's only the Buoyant residents and ratepayers. It's not something that has to be mailed out. It could be done by certainly. This is going to be the word on the street in Buoyant. I can guarantee you tomorrow. You could have a letterbox, well, not a letterbox, a post box drop for Buoyant, and copies in the IGA, and it would every person in Buoyant would have the opportunity within a week. They'd have heard about it, and they'd have the opportunity to have their say. I agree with Councillor Shiano. I think that's but that's also the reason why I left it deliberately vague, to give the CEO the opportunity to say these are the options that have been considered. Bridge Street, Fettlers Park, the Memorial Grounds, behind the hall, and to add in Turner Street, and you might put some other. I'd certainly have an other, or your suggestion, box down the bottom as well, because someone might come up with. You never know. We might even get someone to say, "Look, I've got a block of land in Buoyant on the main street that's empty and that I'm not doing anything with, and I'd like to donate it." People do that sort of thing, It's happened, and so I would, and I also take Ms. Brown's point that Dardanup and Donnybrook. They have managed to talk to the PTA, to ARC Infrastructure, and they've clearly got a good line of communication, because the railway line looks well kept in both of those communities. There's access across it for kids using the Apple playground and so on and so forth. So I don't think. And I also think that ARC Infrastructure is more likely to be far more receptive to an approach from the Shire on this, because they have a policy of accepting long-term leases for these sorts of things, public infrastructure, from local government areas. Where we were trying to move a post from for the cattle yards, that was just a pain, an annoyance for them, because they weren't going to get any money out of it. This is a long-term lease that they will get some, finance from the Shire, and it's the sort of arrangement that they're far more receptive to receive. So, really, I've got confidence in the capacity of the CEO to survey the Buoyant community, to get that done within 3 weeks, so that this is we've got a better answer, and we can make that decision one way or the other. Wherever it goes, wherever the majority of the Buoyant community feels it should go, that we can make that decision by the next ordinary council meeting in June. And I think that this is better, because it gives the CEO some structure, but it also allows him the flexibility and the freedom to adjust it, to put in the ideas and suggestions for alternatives that I am confident that he's got the ability to do. So I'm happy to put that, or ask the President to put that to the councillors, and hope that councillors would support that amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Noonan. I'll put that amendment to the vote. Those in favour? And those against? And the motion is lost 3-6. We now return to the original officer's recommendation. Is there a wish to speak? The Deputy President.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will propose an amendment. The amendment is to delete point 2 and insert 2A, supports a proposed new Boyanup RV dump point and requests the CEO undertake a community consultation process, requesting feedback on the sites outlined in attachment 13.2.1 and Lot 2 corner Southwest Highway and Turner Street before reporting to Council on a recommended site. 2B supports inclusion of a budget allocation for consideration as part of the draft annual budget 2024-25. Give that to you.
All right, let's let that get on the board. Just get you to confirm that's your amendment on the board. Yeah, sorry, hang on. Do you want to put time for that? No? Okay. Yeah. Is that your amendment on the board, Councillor?
Yes. Yes, I'm satisfied that's correct.
All right, is there a seconder to that? Councillor McCleary. The Deputy President.
Thank you, Mr. President. So, addressing some of the issues from the previous debate, one is that this only affects the dump point, so will not affect the progress of the site that's been assessed or recommended for the overnight stay. As I said, I do believe there is community sentiment that there is some opposition to the site that's been suggested behind the hall, and obviously we do have some sites that have had preliminary assessment, which are listed in the attachments. So to address some of the issues around, opening a Pandora's box by including those, we can give clear direction to the organisation as to what sites to consult on. And as you see, I've provided some provision in there for Lot 2, corner of Southwest Highway and Turner Street to be included as a fifth site in that assessment list. As for the comment around, or some noises around the time frame, from my perspective, it's for consideration in the next financial year budget, and that's the year the year perhaps that council hopes that this would be delivered. So I hope that this amendment achieves similar things to what Councillor Noonan was attempting to achieve in his amendment, and of course respects the need for some further community consultation. You'll see in the background that in 2014, just a few months before, or just before I joined council in 2015, the process began for identifying the site for the Capel overnight stay. And in my discussions with the officer, I remember I brought up that there was, we identify quite a few sites, and people do have very strong opinions on where they should be. People don't like them near their house, they don't like them too far from town, but they want them close to everything but as far away as possible. And at the time, we had the benefit of also beginning the process of building the civic precinct and the work that was going on there, which created some opportunities. So I do think it is important that those sites be put to the community for assessment or consultation, and a recommended site be brought back to council. Do I personally believe that under all the criterias and the things that have been mentioned that the site behind the hall is perhaps the best? It could be, and I think there's a very strong case for it from a financial perspective, from access to utilities, and the fact that, of course, most importantly, it's our land, so we are able to do this with limited hold up from other organisations. I note that Main Roads did want to review the plans before they were approved, but look, I'm seeking council's support for this amendment and hope that this will deliver the level of community consultation that we've heard and been requested by the community over the last 48 hours.
Councillor McCleary.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Councillor Siano. Look, I think this is a better outcome. I still believe that we'll still finish up on the same site, and much of that is stemmed around how it's going to connect to services as such. Leaving the RV site as is, at least that gets moving. We can have that without the other. They are excluded. The dump site will be great when it gets there, but at least we can be moving on with parts of the project as we go with this motion. Some of the other thing is, as you pointed out, the land ownership. I think I had a question on that. At least if we own the land, we can control it under the Caravans Act, and that's the 72 hours as such. Once we start dealing with someone else, that will complicate the issues, I believe, with ownership and such, and being able to meet our obligations under the Act. So, yes, look, hats off to this amendment, and I think we should be voting for this and moving forward.
Are there any speakers to that amendment? Councillor Noonan.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I would also like to thank Councillor Siano for his considered motion. I think this illustrates his capacity as a legislator, and I think that it's good. I think he answers a lot of the problems, or some of the concerns that other councillors raised with the previous amendment. We're looking at an investment of, $180,000, which is a pretty substantial amount of money. So I think it's important that we get it right, wherever the best location is. But I think it's also important that we bring the community along with us, and I appreciate Councillor Siano's concern for that, and certainly I hope that the community will see this as well. So thank you. I will be supporting this amendment.
Are there any other speakers for the amendment? No? Does the mover wish to close?
No.
Put that amendment to the vote. Those in favour? That is carried unanimously. All right, that becomes the substantive motion. Are there any speakers for the item? No? Councillor McCleary, as the mover, do you wish to close?
All good. I get to have the final say. Thank you, Mr. President. Look, I think this has been a good debate. It's come out with a good conclusion in the end. We can proceed with things. My concern was that we were going to move things away from budgets and stuff like that. We're very close to setting the budget, and any delays in that might have complicated things a little bit. Not a great deal, but it would have complicated things. So, yes, well done.
I'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? That's carried unanimously. All right, it being nearly 8 p.m, I'll adjourn the meeting for 10 minutes to allow light refreshment. We will reconvene at 8:10. Well, this one's going to take a while too, I think. Well, I don't know if there might be any discussion on that, so that's why I thought, oh, do I risk going to that as well, or let it go? right, it being 11 minutes past 8, I'll call back to order the council meeting. We now move to item 13.3, Bushfire Advisory Committee motions. Impartiality interests have been declared by Councillor Sharp and myself in this item, as we are members of the Bushfire Brigade service. There are 4 recommendations in this item. Is there a mover for officer's recommendation number 1? Councillor Dillon.
Thank you, Mr. President. Can I please move that item but with an amendment?
Sure, Councillor, your amendment.
I believe it has been prepared earlier by our beloved staff.
All right. Is your amendment on the board, Councillor?
That is it. Thank you.
I will second that amendment. Councillor Dillon.
Thank you, Mr. President. So, may I first just thank Ian from the Stirling Brigade for his diligence in following this matter through and his presentation to us tonight. In short, fellow councillors, this is about, this amendment is, well, as described, basically taking us back to the original mitigation notice wording from the previous year. As someone who's the proxy to the BFAC committee, I attended the meeting on April 17, and it is fair to say that it probably wasn't the most fluent of meetings I've ever attended. That's putting it mildly. So there were some misunderstandings amongst the committee and in the room as to item 6.1. So effectively, after an amendment, the members didn't seem to be fully across the fact that they were voting on a substantive motion, and it's fair to say that we were a fair few who weren't happy about that outcome, and I fully understand where they're coming from. So we're basically, I just think it's safest to go back to our original mitigation notice wording around solid fuel barbecues and pizza ovens, and I would assume that BFAC will revisit the terms of the notice at their next meeting and thrash it out then. I just think this is far the safest option when it comes to the notice about to go out with our rates. Again, thanks to Stirling Brigade Captain Ian, all the team and all the various volunteer members that I've spoken to around our various brigades. Your service and diligence is really, really appreciated, and I would certainly urge all my fellow councillors to adopt this amendment as presented.
Thank you, Councillor Dillon. Yeah, there's nothing really more I can add to what you said. I think you've hit the nail on the head. I was reminded this afternoon, back in 2017-18, when we actually beefed up these requirements around wood solid fuel barbecues, there was actually a bit of community backlash in terms of the restriction on it and how much more difficult it made for these sorts of equipment to operate in this period of year. So I think if we are going to take away some of that restriction, then we need to make sure we do it properly, as we don't lax the standards and then have to try and whack them up again if there are issues. But no, I think this is the way to proceed this year, and as has been suggested by the captain of the Stirling Brigade, I think we can bring this around next year, and the BFAC can have a proper thrash out, as has been suggested by Councillor Dillon, and properly workshop these proposals and make sure BFAC is at least behind its recommendations completely going forward, because there has been some discussion between a few of us. I know myself and Councillor Dillon have received a significant number of phone calls. I don't know if it's made its way into the rest of the council, but some of the members of the BFAC do have some concerns. So I think this is the way for this year, and we'll certainly have a bigger discussion next year around these sorts of matters. So I commend the alternative recommendation to the council. Are there any speakers against that item? Speakers for? Councillor Sharp.
I'd just like to commend Councillor Dillon for bringing this to the table as an amendment, and I definitely concur with also what the President has stated. This is really serious stuff. We all know we're in a drying environment. We all know we live in high-risk areas, and this is just so important to be aware of the rules around lighting virtually open fires under really tenuous conditions and the results that they can have to the communities. So thank you.
Are there any other speakers to the item? The Deputy President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Look, I support the alternative recommendation, and but I do want to make some comments around, I guess, how it can and cannot be included in a bushfire mitigation order. And the Shire President's already mentioned that up until only recently, this was usually not included in our bushfire mitigation order. And then referring back to the Bushfire Act, Clause 25 of the Bushfire Act, particularly 25(1), is only specific to open air fires. So by the definition of encompassing the wood and solid fuel in a barbecue type situation where it is surrounded by some sort of device or application, there is within the Bushfire Act the ability for us to allow for these types of barbecues and cooking appliances to be used. And of course, obviously, it is affected by the prohibited burning period. But I think it's important to remember we can do this. It is allowed to happen. But ultimately, I think what we're maintaining here is a status quo. Do have the similar concerns to other councillors around perhaps the process on how it became to be omitted from the mitigation process and the concerns from BFAC. And I'm very happy to maintain the status quo. But I expect that this will come up again. So I think we're going to be having this discussion further down the track, and we have to be aware of what the Bushfire Act actually allows us to do.
Are there any other speakers to the item? Councillor Terentroy.
Thank you, Councillor Dillon, for bringing this amendment forward, because I attended my first BFAC meeting that night, and so there's a lot of things that need to it was an interesting night because I was lost because I had an agenda and I couldn't follow it, and then I realised that they were voting on something other than what was the agenda that I was following. But anyway, yes, I think that I'm really glad that Ian came in through you to the chair, and for the emails too, and all the information provided. So I'll be voting for this amendment. Thank you.
Are there any further speakers? Councillor Dillon, do you wish to close?
Thank you, Mr. President. Just briefly, Councillor Shiano makes some really good points, especially regarding, what will or is available, to be done under the Act. But I would rather just return to our original wording as I've put forward here. And in my conversations with the fire captain from Stirling Brigade, he did make a very good point, and probably bears mentioning here. It's like, well, we haven't had a serious fire in this part of the world under our current regs for quite some time. So I'm happy to go along with him and my fellow or other fireys' recommendations there. We'll put it back to BFAC, but as long as this motion, as I've changed, gets up tonight, I'd be very happy.
And with that, I'll put it to the vote. Those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. Officer's recommendation number 2. Is there a mover for that item? Councillor Dillon. Is there a seconder? Councillor Noonan. Councillor Dillon.
Just as read, thanks, Mr. President.
Councillor Noonan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I did have some. I think this system for the notification for call-outs is an improvement on the previous system, the current system. I do have some reservations about the fact that the Bushfire Brigade, the first call is to the Bushfire Brigade area, responsible for the area, as opposed to being to the closest available brigade. and the basis of that concern is when someone calls on a 000 call, it's an emergency, and every minute counts. In fact, every second counts. And so we have to make sure that as a Shire, it is our responsibility to get an appliance to that fire as quickly as we possibly can. And it doesn't matter if the firefighter is doesn't matter what their colour or creed is, it doesn't matter what the name on the side of the truck is. What does matter is the timeliness of them arriving at that fire. So, having said that, the Shire boundaries between the bushfire brigades currently are somewhat made more difficult by the current construction going on with the Bunbury Outer Ring Road, and I think that depending on what day and how many stop-go people there are on the road, it can vary the response from various different areas. And so what I'd suggest is that later on down the track, maybe in a year or so, when the bore construction is finished and Lilydale and all of that sort of stuff, when it's all over, that it might be an idea for bushfire brigades to conduct trials in their various different patches to see, so that we can work out how quickly various different brigades can get to various different properties, and then to obviously pass that information back up to the beat layer, to the call-out centres. Obviously, for hazard reduction burns, it doesn't, the current areas are perfectly make perfect sense, because they're planned events, and it's entirely appropriate that the different brigades have the areas that they have based on the similarity of the properties that they're looking after. So having said all that, I certainly I will support the officer's recommendation and thank Councillor Dillon for moving it.
Are there any other speakers to that item? Councillor Dillon, you wish to close?
Thank you, Mr. President. Just briefly, thank you, Councillor Noonan, for seconding that. Look, this is a good arrangement, but what Councillor Noonan says is pertinent. However, the CEO, our director, our emergency services coordinator, and all the various brigades are going to reassess the various patches based on changes to the road network concerning the bore. So that is all very, very much on the radar at BFAC and will be looked at in due course.
I'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? And that's carried unanimously. Officer's recommendation number 3. Is there a mover for that update to the terms of reference for the BFAC? Moved Councillor McCleary. Is there a seconder? Councillor Tarantroy. Councillor McCleary.
I'll move it as read.
Councillor Tarantroy. Is there any discussion on those terms of reference? Councillor McCleary, anything further? I'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? That's carried unanimous. Officer's recommendation number 4. Is there a mover for that recommendation? Councillor Dillon. Seconder. Councillor McCleary. Councillor Dillon.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just very simply, just to basically read the recommendation again, the Council supports the Bushfire Brigade Training Coordinator to become an accredited DFES trainer for the Shire of Capel for the first 2 modules to allow greater flexibility and timelines for training of new firefighters.
Councillor McCleary.
Mr. President. Look, this just makes sense and good efficiency.
Is there any discussion on that item? Councillor Noonan?
Thank you, Mr. President. And thank you, Councillor Dillon, for moving the motion. I would hope, and I know this is once again another thing for further down the track, that particularly that new facility that's been built in Jalora, that it becomes a training centre, not just for firefighters who go through the whole signing up to become members of the Bushfire Brigade, but I would hope that we could, if it's possible, either through DFS or through the brigade itself, brigade structure, that we could also conduct fire training, fire awareness training for residents who don't necessarily have the time to join up or the inclination at that stage, and whatever is going on in the business of their lives, don't have the opportunity to sign up. And I do believe that there's a limit to the number of people that any brigade can have at any given time. No? So, that's good. So that we could, because obviously the more people that we've got trained, the more people who've got some background, and so those people who decide to stay and defend their homes, if they've got some training, some better understanding, I think we've got an ideal facility there to provide that education, and I would hope that would also be part of that Fire Brigade training coordinator's remit. Thank you.
Are there any other speakers to that item? Councillor Tarantroy?
Just to add to what Councillor Noonan was saying, I think it's a great thing about training our volunteers and getting the trainers within our bushfire brigades and the captains better prepared to be able to do that. That's fantastic, and I think that it'll only add to the service that they offer to the community.
Are there any further speakers? Councillor Dillon? I'll put that item to the vote. Those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Item 13.4, update to Committee of Council membership. Is there a mover for that item? The Deputy President. Is there a seconder? Councillor Ferguson. The Deputy President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Move as read.
Councillor Ferguson. Is there any discussion on that recommendation? Anything further from the Deputy President? I'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Infrastructure and Development Reports, 14.1, amendments to local planning policies 6.3 and 6.11. Is there a mover for those local planning policies? Councillor Ferguson. Seconded, Councillor McCleary. Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think they're self-explanatory, and as I understand it, they just make our life a little bit simpler, particularly for staff. Thank you.
Councillor McCleary.
I did have some questions, but I think I've had them answered by reading the document, so yeah, as read.
Are there any speakers for or against that item? Councillor Ferguson? I'll put that item to the vote. Those in favour? That's carried unanimously. 14.2, 10-year fleet and plant replacement, 2024 to 2034. Is there a mover for that fleet replacement program? Councillor Ferguson. Is there a seconder? Councillor Noonan. Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Mr. President. This was discussed some detail in a briefing, and it makes eminent sense, although there's a couple of issues regarding the 120k warranty and the 100k warranty, but I believe that doesn't affect the motion per se. And actually I think this is a sensible way to rationalise our fleet changeover into the future years, and it seems like a very well thought out and sensible policy, and I support it.
Councillor Noonan.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Councillor Ferguson, for moving the motion. Thank you to the staff for preparing it. I think it's fairly rare that we get motions come along where the amount asked for in the current year is actually less than the amount requested in previous years. Previous budget allocation in 2023 was over $1 million, and I think that it's testament to the good use of the Shire equipment, and the Director of Infrastructure and her staff, how they've worked to allocate the resources well, and also being able to get more mileage, if you like, with the vehicles that we get, and better warranty conditions. So I think that this is it's nice to see something actually coming down, a budget line item coming down. So I'm very happy to endorse this recommendation.
Are there any speakers against the recommendation? Speakers for? Councillor Tarantroy.
I just wanted to point out that under the officer's comment, there is a typo where it says that it's 100 kilometres in the little dot points, but then down further it's gone to 120,000 kilometres. However, in item number 15.4 coming up, the policy is correct, so this is just a typo in the officer's comment. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Are there any other speakers to that item? Councillor McCleary.
I'll start with a question, thank you, Mr. President, and it's probably direct to the Financial Office. Previously we used to advertise the older vehicles for tender. Do we still go down that process, or is it just a straight trade-in?
The Director of Infrastructure and Development.
All the vehicles are put out to tender, Councillor, just to allow us to get the best value for money from the market, and it allows us also to tender more than one vehicle at once.
So it's a tender for the contract, or a tender to sell the existing vehicles? What I was
It's
after.
generally done at the same time because you get the trade-in from the new purchase.
So we do trades, we don't just offer them out to the public as a tender?
No, we don't.
I'm wondering whether that might be more prudent to go down that path and do a bit of investigation.
The Chief Executive Officer.
Through you, Shire President, I might just add that you would see in the draft corporate business plan that we're currently developing and populating with councillors. It's the idea that we'd have a fleet review, and that would include some of the decisions we've made to keep vehicles for longer and review which is best value for money, but also the method of disposal. So that'll be part of the review.
Thanks for that. Yeah, look, this going through, and it's obvious that we've got some other options to get rid of the vehicles that we have, going forward in the business plan. So yeah, it's good option.
All right. Any further speakers to that item? Councillor Ferguson, you wish to close? I'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Community and Corporate Reports 15.1, accounts paid during the month of April 2024. Is there a mover for those accounts? Councillor Tarantroy. Seconder, Councillor Mogg. Councillor Tarantroy.
Oh, look, I went through this and I sent an email querying 3 EFTs and got my questions answered, so a very transparent process, and I'm happy to recommend this to the council.
Councillor Mogg. Is there any discussion on those accounts? Councillor Mogg, anything further? Councillor Terence, anything further? I'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? That's carried unanimously. 15.2, financial reports, 31st of March 2024. Is there a mover for those financial reports? Councillor Mogg.
Thank you,
Seconded.
Mr. President.
Councillor Terence. Councillor Mogg, you have the call.
Thanks, Mr. President. I move the motion as read. Thank you.
Councillor Terence. Are there any speakers on the financial reports? Councillor Noonan.
Thank you, Mr. President. If I could just ask a query on EFT 45342.
Sorry, Councillor, on the financial reports.
Oh, you've already...
With the accounts for the
jumped
last
those.
item.
Okay. Well, I will chase that up after.
Sure.
Thank you.
Is there anything further on the financial reports? Councillor Mogg, do you wish to close? I'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Item 15.3, financial reports, the 30th of April 2024. Is there a mover for those reports? Councillor McCleary. Seconder. Councillor Mogg. Councillor McCleary.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll move the motion as read and note that we've got a carryover of 649,000 into next year's budget that we will be looking at over the next couple of weeks.
Councillor Mogg. Is there any discussion on the financial reports for April? Councillor Terence.
I just want to note for anyone who's of the public who've read it, there is a surplus. However, we've got, I think it's counted 16 deferments to the 24-25 budget. So it's really money that's already set aside. It's not really a surplus. Thank you.
Are there any other speakers to the item? Councillor McCleary, you wish to close? No. I'll put that to the vote. Those in favour? Those against? Are you again? I'll do that again. Those in favour of the financial reports? That's carried unanimously. Item 15.4, the policy review, fleet and plant procurement. Is there a mover? The Deputy President. A seconder, Councillor Terence. The Deputy President.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. It may seem minor, but there's some major changes which I think a lot of the points made in the discussion around the fleet procurement plan actually probably apply a lot more to the policy setting that's been established in this item. Notably, the change in a trend to the 5-year fleet life and the 100,000 Ks, which is a trend that we've noticed, you would notice in the warranty of new vehicles, in the way that warranties have continued to extend from 3 to 5 years, even 7, and without dropping names, but you could get a 10-year diamond advantage. But I think as well, there was a bit of discussion earlier about disposal, and I know that was mentioned to be in the talking about in the corporate business plan, but it doesn't really address that in such detail in this policy, and I don't think it necessarily needs to. I think one of the things that I note as well is the comments around electrifying some part of the fleet. And while I'm very supportive of the introduction of electric vehicles, I think the reasons given by the administration as to why that's probably not as achievable as what we first set out to do, I think very reasonable, I think very fair. I tend to agree. I tend to agree with that, and I just note in regards to the grant which was applied for in 2023. I just asked the question then, obviously we're nearly 6 months into 2024. When have we, I'll ask the question, has that grant been announced yet? Did we successfully receive that grant? And what capital was that grant for? The capital upgrade to allow for the infrastructure to support electrified fleet, or was it for the purchase of electrifying a portion of the fleet?
The Chief Executive Officer.
The Director might add and contribute as well. So to answer your questions in order, Deputy Shire President, yes, the grant has been announced. Yes, the Shire was successful. We decided not to accept the grant. To answer your question, the grant was for the infrastructure, so the charging infrastructure. In return for receiving the grant for the charging infrastructure, which was for less than the next bit I'm about to say, the Shire would have been required to purchase 3 electric vehicles. Part of the reasons why we negotiated with the WA Local Government Association for some time, and we identified a number of risks in the grant offer, not limited to, I guess, some implementation challenges within the Shire at the time in terms of where would the vehicles be allocated, how would we accommodate charging from home, and the costs associated with those. We also liaised with the local government insurance scheme, who raised some significant concerns around, I guess, the valuation at the end of, or the time of trade-in of electric vehicles, given that they've been on the market for such a short period of time and that we had very limited surety of about what the trade-in value might be. They also raised some significant concerns around the insurability and the impacts on the Shire's insurance profile. So in the balance of all those things, and on the basis that we could actually budget for less money than we were going to be required to and install the charging infrastructure, we decided not to proceed. So we've since reviewed that and decided to proceed in sort of town 2 different paths. So you'll see that the draft corporate business plan includes some funds for us to start installing charging infrastructure, and then separate to that we'll undertake the fleet review, which will tell us how do we actually enter properly into electric vehicles into our fleet.
Yeah, that answers my question. I guess there was a little bit, I needed a bit of clarity on the paragraph regarding the grant, because it did specify that we had withdrawn from the grant, but it hadn't specified that we'd been successful in receiving the grant. I think the reasons given by the CEO is very reasonable, and I think it's one of the challenges that a number of local governments are having with integrating electric vehicles into their fleet. I mean, ultimately, the market is perhaps moving a little slower than some people expected, even with such significant take-up in consumer vehicles. And there are local governments who have a number of electric vehicles in their fleet, and you'll notice, I think a lot of them are Nissan Leafs, and I think the Nissan Leaf program was a partnership with Nissan. So ultimately, those local governments that have been able to deliver the Leafs in their into their fleet have only really been able to do so with assistance, external assistance from, I think there was some federal government money there for a little while for government departments, with the view that if the government invested significantly in electric vehicles, there'd be an influx of vehicles going onto the second-hand market, which would draw down the price, because at the moment I think it is unaffordable and unattainable. But yeah, I think I want to see it happen at some point. You know, we don't have the stuff on the market yet to replace the Rangers vehicles with something that's electrified. And I think the reasons for why we can't do that this year around, I think, are very reasonable. And yeah, otherwise, I'm very happy with the policy. I think the comments were made earlier in the actual program that I think we're getting a lot more effective life out of the vehicles, and vehicles are becoming more reliable. We purchase reliable brands, and you know, not necessarily there's much of a saving so much because the vehicle pricing continues to increase. But yeah, happy with the policy, and yeah, recommend it to council.
Are there any other speakers on that policy? Councillor Ferguson?
Through you, Mr. President.
Apologies. Sorry, I've jumped the gun there. The second
Sorry?
Councillor Terence
Oh,
Roy.
sorry? My apologies.
That's my fault. Councillor Terence Roy.
Yes, I'd like to say that I think it's really important that every grant that comes across the Shire's desk, we just don't jump at because it's a grant. We need to look at the strings attached, and I think at this stage, the strings attached to purchase 3 electric vehicles and then try to integrate that into our fleet when we are a Band 3 council is probably going to put us under financial pressure and make it difficult. So I applaud the insight of the staff and CEO. Thank you.
Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is more a question, but does the policy still enable us to consider in a timely way PHEV vehicles as an interim to perhaps say fully electrified elements in our fleet? Because I mean they seem to overcome part of the objections that the CEO raised, that is you can charge them at home with not too many difficulties, and they may well be an appropriate interim, and maybe even learn the process of how to utilise electric vehicles and overcome the range anxiety that we would have in a regional shire like this.
The answer to that is yes. As included as a key point in the policy is sustainability considerations, so economy, efficiency and emissions. All right. Are there any further speakers to that policy? No. The Deputy Shire President, you wish to close? No. I'll put that policy to the vote. Those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Item 15.5, Dalyellup Multi-Purpose Community and Youth Centre, Operation and Management Plan. Moved, Councillor Terence-Roy. Seconded, Councillor McCleary. Councillor Terence-Roy.
Through our discussions and questions, we discovered, I mean, I moved this as read, but I just wanted to say that the equipment procurement is in the capital build under there, so it's not listed separately. Yeah, so other than that, I think it's been such an ongoing, long planned thing, and I think that this will do the Dalyellup and the wider Capel community a service.
Councillor McCleary.
Thank you, Mr. President. I looked at this and then saw the operating costs and the size of it. That concerns me going forward because that's a carryover to future budgets and long-term financial plan. There's some of it comes from the existing library funds. I think there's 150k from that. It's a big chunk of money out of an operating budget, but I think it's a good decision, and as with all of these, it's for the whole of the Shire. It's not just a section of Shire, even though it's based in Dalyellup. Also, just noting that it's going to feed into the future areas of having somewhere where people can, what we say at the meeting today, creative industries process that will feed into this and be able to use this facility going forward. So we've needed something in Dalyellup for a while, but it's certainly central to a whole lot of our community.
Are there any other speakers on this item? Councillor Noonan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think that this is a wonderful facility that people not just in Dalyella but certainly the whole of the Shire are looking forward to seeing it built. The operation and management plan's 90 pages, but it will also be attached as part of this agenda, available for people to have a look at, and I encourage members of the public to have a look at that because it is a very good snapshot of the Shire and of Dalyella and of the growth and the opportunity that is in Dalyella, and also the opportunity that that this facility will provide, a range of equipment and classes that will be available, and I particularly look forward to the life drawing class. Thank you, Mr. President.
Are there any other speakers? The Deputy President.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll point out that the estimated figures by staff on the operating cost of this facility were really close, because it was September 2023 when the figure 780,000 was thrown out there, and it ended up in the West, and you could read all about mine and former Councillor Andrew's feud over the cost of running the building in the West Australian. But I mean, how close, to get the consultant in who's been running this process for so long. It's a very detailed report. I think it's really important to mention, so, you've got that exactly what was it? It was 759,172 in the first year. That's, when you look at the incoming and the outgoing, it's actually only about a 50% subsidisation from municipal funds. So that for a local government facility is quite good in my mind. And of course, you've got this ability to, and I asked the question earlier about the equipment cost and the fact that's built into the capital cost in the establishment, more from the point of, well, if you're not going to get someone in who can run the simulator, which I'm on the fence about, even though I've personally got one at home, but interesting thing to deliver in a local government facility, but they are popular. But I will also say you do actually need someone who knows how to use them to operate them, and if you're paying good money to use one, you want someone who knows how to set it up to get you set up. So, but I kind of wondered whether or not we'd have the ability maybe not to invest in those things and bring them on as we establish. I guess at the end of the day, we've got the government funding to support the capital costs, and so it probably is better on the bottom line that those things are coming from the grant funding, from the funding that's being provided to us by Lottery West and the current state government. But I think that's really important. I think the fees, obviously a big part of the recommendation is the officer's recommendations is basically the back of the report, page 88. I like the Shire President's naming suggestion that he threw out there the other day. It's just a shame that it was taken by an airline. But I think I've said it around the skate park, around that precinct, and it is always meant to have been the heart of Dalyella. I mean, someone came in and said, "Oh, let's move the skate park out to the surf club." That spot has always been earmarked to be the heart of Dalyella. I think the consultant has captured that component quite well, and some of the conversation, and I do get some community feedback, around this is expensive, it's a very expensive building. You call it a youth centre, and people go, "Oh, they bloody don't need that stuff. What a waste of money." But it's really important to sell this as the fact that this is a heart of Dalyella, and it is more than just a youth centre. It is a community multi-purpose space. It is a permanent home for the library. The staffing and the operation costs, and it's reflected in the report. At the end of the day, they are costs that to some degree we already experience with the current facility that's provided in Dalyella, which is inadequate for a community like Dalyella. So I think this is really important. I question the cost of photocopying. Oh, geez, the last time I walked in high school and printed at a Shire of Capel library, I think it cost me 30 cents for some black and white A4 paper. But, geez, the cost of living's really hit the photocopier quite hard. $1.55, I think. But I hope that's colour. But yeah, ultimately, look, very happy with that. I think when you put into perspective the level of subsidisation, the actual true operating cost of that, the level of staffing that is outlined in this proposal as well, is a considerable component. And when you put all that together and you look at actually how much it costs to run that, if we can operate this at the net position that is in this report, I think that's a really great outcome for the ratepayer. I think it's a great service. City of Bunbury runs all of their facilities about $1 million in the red anyway, so we're a lot further ahead of them. But yeah, really happy with the work that the consultant's done on this report, and support the officer's recommendation.
Are there any other speakers to that item? No, I'll have a little bit. Completely concur with the comments made by the Deputy President there. Very well put. Yes, this is the jewel in the crown of the little precinct that we've got together at the end of Portobello Road there in Dalyella with the skate park and the nature play space, the pump track. This will be the last piece of that puzzle, and it really is something exciting to see. Something that I've been quite keenly following the progress on, and I've probably been a little bit unfair in the pressure on the CEO in recent times. If it was up to me, the shovel would have been in the ground last year. But ultimately, there's checks and balances, and these things aren't up to me. So very happy to see this come forward. Do support the recommendation. Disagree a little bit in terms of the recommendations, particularly number one. I think we can come up with a better vision for that building than what has been recommended. While it is sort of the heart of Dalyella, I think the heart is taken by the facility they have down in Augusta Margaret River there. I think we can come up with something that's a bit more in tune with the building's purpose and a bit more cutting edge. So you'll be glad to know I've also come up with some alternative names, but for some reason I seem to be sticking with the airline theme, because the next name I thought of was Dalyella Delta. So I don't know what my thought pattern is there, but I do think going forward, when we get out to the community and have that conversation around naming of the building, potential naming rights of some of the things in there, and we'll start to decipher exactly what that vision is for this building. But it'd be fantastic to see when it comes to fruition, and we'll start seeing some better concepts coming through the tender process when we really start to see some of the concept designs that will go on the building, and they won't just be tacked on or painted on, they'll actually be included in the concrete works by local artists and indigenous artists, which will really just make that building come to life and be the home of all things youth and information sharing and connection and creation in Dalyella. So, it certainly is something that the community is very excited to see. I go to the primary schools and the senior schools in Dalyella semi-regularly, and it's every single time I'm there, it's something that is asked of me is, when's that building coming? We want to get in there. The students are pretty keen to use it, so it's just fantastic that there is that capability that we can have people come and privately use it, but also having some of the schools express an interest in using it, because one of the things we did identify early on was that schools have either got the technology but don't have the resourcing to adequately use it, or they've got the resourcing but they don't have the technology. So hopefully we can fill that gap and provide a much higher level of service, but work together with them in ensuring we can provide students the opportunity for the skills of the future. We'll see how the VR thing goes, but for a while there I thought you were gearing yourself up for a job there, Mr. Deputy President. But I think that's something very excited to see, and it's certainly a technology of the future. So I'm very happy to commend this to the council. I do hope it gets up, because I think it's time that the Dalyalup community had that next level of service, the permanent home for the library, as well as a centre for our youth in the district, of which Dalyalup does house the majority of our youth. But as was pointed out by another councillor, this is not just about Councillor Noonan. This is not just actually about Dalyalup. It is for the entire district, but there will also be benefits for the region as well. So, very supportive. Are there any other speakers to the item? Councillor Terrentroy, you wish to close?
Definitely. As an educator who works in a high school at the moment, I think the DMCYC is an innovative, resourceful, and it's focused on what the community needs. It's going to be digital creatives. It's going to have so it's going to be, which is written in the agenda, the heart of the community. And I commend this to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask one back of the hall. On long weekends, the traffic is very busy through Boyanup. It is bumper to bumper along South Western Highway, and last long weekend in March, leading into the South West Highway paper, I had no hope of turning across the traffic. So I reversed out to go down Bridge Street, only to be Street bumper to bumpers, and cutting through the general stores car park and squeezing in the bumper to bumper South West Highway traffic. So thinking about that with a long weekend, just to gauge how busy it is on a long weekend, which is when a lot of look at a suitability location. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Brown. We'll take that on notice and see. All right. Are there any motions without notice? Doors.